Welcome to the Good News Flower Hour, people. I'm your host, Dave Easy. Dateline, Iran, 2009. Millions take to the streets to protest what is widely perceived to be a stolen election, despite the prevailing threat of arrest, bodily harm, and a body count that currently numbers a dozen protesters shot dead by government forces. And still, day after day, the Iranian people take to the streets to protest the gross violation of their democratic rights. Now rewind. The year is 2000. The place is Florida in the immediate aftermath of a presidential election, Bush versus Gore.
Something's happened.
George Bush is the president-elect of the United States. He has won the state of Florida, according to our projections.
The initial tally has Bush ahead by a mere 300 votes, a margin so narrow it triggers a mandatory machine recount. Chaos ensues. Lawyers and activists for both sides descend on Florida amid widespread allegations of voting irregularities and voter suppression. Gore asked for a hand recount in 4 heavily Democratic counties. A hand recount, though undoubtedly more accurate, is time-consuming and painstakingly slow, rendered all the more so by confusing butterfly paper ballots and dangling chads. Florida Secretary of State Katherine Harris, who also serves as co-chair of Bush's Florida campaign, announced she would reject any revised total if they were not turned in by November 14th. The Florida State Supreme Court extends the deadline to November 26th. At this point, the Supreme Court of the United States intercedes and, in a decision that continues to cast a shadow over the High Court, declares the Florida court's extension of the recount deadline is unconstitutional, effectively putting Florida in Bush's electoral win column and making him the 43rd president of the United States, despite having lost the popular vote. The will of the people was ignored. Oddly, the nationwide reaction to what was effectively a coup d'etat by judicial fiat is muted. Unlike Iran, there would be no mass demonstrations in the streets of American cities. All of which begs the question, why?
50% for George W. Bush, 48% for Al Gore. Ralph Nader.
In Iran, Ahmadinejad won by a landslide, garnering 10 million more votes than he did in 2005. In Florida 2000, the margin was razor thin, and the final result drawn out over 6 agonizing weeks of procedural bureaucracy and legal challenges, lawsuits, and counter-lawsuits.
Turn to MSNBC and the experts.
U.S. officials tell CNN Bush officials.
Iran has a state-run media which, by definition, has a huge disadvantage in convincing the public that it is fair, balanced, or even remotely truthful. In the U.S., the media is owned by private corporations, giving it the aura of independence even when it's reporting what the government wants it to report, as it did in the run-up to the Iraq War. In Iran, nobody trusts the state-run media or doubts for one second that it is anything other than a megaphone for the regime. In America, the notion that the mainstream media is a tool of social control is disguised by false debates about which network is more fair and balanced and which network is the most trusted name in news. In Iran, dissenters are arrested and imprisoned. In America, we marginalize and discredit them.
Don't tase me, bro! Don't tase me!
Exiling their opinions to the lunatic fringe of public discourse. In Iran, the public is intimidated by paramilitary goon squads who roam the streets armed with truncheons, cracking open the skulls of anyone who steps out of line. In America, the public is pacified by television, which keeps the populace fat, lazy, ignorant, and contented, drunk on meaningless entertainment, and distracted by 24/7 celebrity gossip,
matching boob jobs,
and wall-to-wall sports coverage. In America, life is a long, slow, get-rich-quick scheme, a breathless marathon sprint on the hamster wheel of material pursuit and wealth accumulation, prodded relentlessly by the near-pornographic allure of the brass ring that will remain forever just out of reach for all but the tiniest minority. To get off the hamster wheel for even one afternoon of marching in the streets is to risk falling hopelessly behind in the race towards the ever-elusive upward mobility. In Iran, 53% of the population lives below the poverty line.
But today, the selling has become as sophisticated as the science.
In America, 50% of the population is over the age of 35 and dug in deep to the status quo, with most steeply leveraged into acquiescence with mortgages, tuition costs, and the mortal fear of losing health insurance coverage. In Iran, 70% of the population is under the age of 30. It was only 30 years ago that the Iranian people last overthrew their oppressors. In America, that hasn't happened in 230 years. In Iran, if you're unhappy with your lot in life and the direction of the country, you blame the government. In America, you blame yourself. In Iran, they take to the streets. In the U.S., they take antidepressants.